It's the hot new percussion instrument, Fragments of Silicon.
All right. Good morning, and well, let's be honest. I don't think there's anyone rightly listening to us right now, and that's mainly because we're broadcasting at an unusual time. It's Wednesday, but it's the morning, and we're here. The reason for that is pretty simple, actually. Our guest is from the UK. Tuesdays are kind of iffy for us right now, what with Petty Fan's knee. Um, Plus, Galax over here is having Tuesday problems as well. So, you know, we had to do this show, we had to do this interview at this moment in time. For those who might be listening to the recording version, whatever, we are still doing the rest of this at the regular time. It's just the interview here is taking place now. And joining us this week is Sam West of Incubator Creation.
Hello. Nice to be on.
Indeed, it's nice to have you on. Right.
Sorry, I'm in a time zone that's not convenient for everybody.
We're used to it. I'm like, that's why we have, an 11 o'clock a.m. recording time, because we deal with a lot of guests from Europe.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we like to get started by getting to know the person behind the game, the studio, and whatnot. And we like to do that by asking them, how did they get interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Well, it's the usual story. I've always been interested in video games since I was younger, so I don't think that's anything out of the ordinary. But when I was in my kind of final year of sixth form, which is like high school, I guess, I just suddenly decided, I don't want to do physics at all. I want to do video games. That's where my passion is. So I'm just going to go and learn the ropes with Unity and stuff and then see where that takes me. So that's kind of my story. I went and did a computer science degree to understand the programming a bit more, and this is my first kind of real effort.
So you've never worked anywhere else before now?
No, not in the video game industry.
And is this a side project, or is this a full-time gig right now?
It was full-time, but I kind of went into it with treating it as a bit of a learning project, like going through the whole process, seeing all the aspects are that are involved in it, and going through Steam's pipeline. So it was a learning process as much as it was trying to make something that I was happy with.
I suppose the question that beckons here is, how long ago did you start this learning process, and are you still on it? What have you learned? What do you feel like you still need to learn?
I don't think I'll ever finish, that's for sure. With this, I think it was mostly just seeing the level of stuff that is required to go into a game. Like, I did a few prototypes of this, and it was originally a text-based game. I wanted to see how far I could go with making something that wasn't a traditional style text-based game, and it ballooned a bit out of that. So I think I learned a lot about how complex building RPGs is, and how much time everything takes. Like, I now know that 50% is development, 50% is just getting it right, which I didn't really anticipate at the beginning. I thought it was going to be a 6-month project, and it turned into like a year and a half. Yeah, a bit of scope creep there.
If we had a nickel for every time we heard, this game was supposed to take this amount of time and it ended up taking so much longer, we would have a lot of nickels.
Yeah. I think if I got a pound for every time I said it, like, oh yeah, it'll be done soon. Don't worry.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard the refrain. You know what? This project not only took the amount of time I thought, but it took less time.
I think one day I'd like to be able to say that. That would be good.
No doubt, no doubt. Um, but are you a one-man studio?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that would explain a few things. Like, having to do everything yourself is an involved process.
Yeah. And I think the main um, issue that I had was not being able to talk to anyone to bounce ideas around and things like that. So I do see that that's kind of the main issue of solo development. So if I do future projects, I'd ideally like to be able to work with some other people and just get their input, because I found some days I was just kind of going back and forth between, oh, do I want this or do I want that, and then not really deciding on anything. So that's a bit of why it took so long.
Makes sense. I mean, I'm not sure. There are certainly plenty of remedies for that, but I'm not sure which one you would embark on. Like, working with somebody local, working, over the internet, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And of course, got to bear in mind, I can't pay anyone. Well, not at the moment, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, so
Sorry.
the game here in question is Beyond the Veil. It is being built as a roguelike role-playing game, kind of an adventure thing. Like, it seems to be a mishmash of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And you previously mentioned here this was born out of a desire to move away from text-based RPGs. I suppose my first question there is, have you actually made any text-based RPGs?
I've made small ones, just for practice projects myself, but I haven't done anything that I've released. This was going to be my first, but obviously it turned into something else.
Right. And exactly why did you want to move away from doing something text-based other than say marketability?
I guess I think I just wanted to try out some more visual stuff. There's I still do have a lot of interest in text-based stuff, because I'm interested in how people imagine what you show them via text rather than what you show them with images. But I thought that from a learning point of view, trying to do graphics and particle effects and things like that would probably be better for me in the long run, if that makes sense.
I can see the desire for knowledge there, given that, well, it's not 1985 anymore. It's like, yeah, interactive fiction once dominated the industry, but we're talking about literally 40 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that was something that I wanted to do, was to try and make it more up to date, try and give it modern mechanics, and I was trying to toy with a real-time text-based combat thing. I don't know if you've ever played Sanctuary RPG or heard of it.
Doesn't ring a bell. What about you guys?
I have not.
It's
doesn't
pretty
ring
good.
a bell to me. Yeah.
But they have it's not quite real time. It responds to how quickly you input, but you just have to press 1, 2, 3, 4 and to say what skills you want to use, and it's pretty fast paced, in my opinion, compared to other text-based games.
Sounds like it. I gotta admit, I'm not all that well versed in text-based games.
Yeah, it's definitely a niche market nowadays.
To say the least.
Yeah.
But anyway, so getting into the graphical style here, this is definitely a very abstract game.
Yeah.
Was there a particular reason why you wanted this stylization?
Well, the lighting with the shadows was actually something I did in university for a. We had to do like mini game jams for our projects, and we accidentally came up with that. And I thought I would actually like to do this for a real game, and then tried to work out what graphics would fit with it. And I kind of thought it would be cool to have the mandala inspired, like big, the patterns on the ground, stuff like that, and make it all very geometric.
And do you think you succeeded in that endeavor?
I hope so. I mean, people say it looks nice, so obviously I only see all the flaws with it, but I think I did a good job.
Ah, yes, the old creator's dilemma.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as representing geometric shapes, I can see some of it, like kind of literally here, since there is a lot of darkness and shadows and stuff.
The mandala designs are pretty nice.
Thanks.
Like, and it's got a nice, if fairly common stylization, black and white with an emphasis on red.
Yeah.
Now, what made you want to do like a roguelike type of game?
I think with this project, I didn't, other than text-based, I didn't really go in thinking it was going to be any particular type of game. I just kind of thought about the themes of what I wanted to talk about it in it, and then worked off that, really. So the roguelike-ness, I think, just emerged from that.
I see. So it's how do I put this? The gameplay took a backseat to the thematic elements you wanted to in on the project.
Yeah. I think to maybe a fault, I was focusing really heavily on the atmosphere and the design and letting the mechanics evolve out of that rather than driving it by the mechanics first.
That's not really my place to say. But I suppose the question that does pop out is, outside of like the shadows and lighting effects that you developed in university and such, what sort of themes were you attempting to convey to the player here? Like, I mean, what sort of story did you want to tell here?
Well, the whole thing was actually kind of kicked off by my own personal problems that I had in university, and my general kind of, I didn't have a particularly good time, and then I lost a family member at the end of it, so I was trying to deal with that, and that's kind of where the story came from. So it's quite focused around mortality, and it's a bit of a metaphor for how I dealt with everything, and all the questions that ran through my head, and it's quite dark. It's quite a dark story.
I mean, given that setup, how could it not be?
Yeah. And that's why it was the atmosphere and the story that were most important to me with it, because it was so personal.
Certainly. And I suppose I should ask, did working on this game actually help you out with your, coping with the loss of your relative and all that jazz?
Yeah, it definitely did help. I mean, it made me ask questions of myself that maybe I wasn't very comfortable asking, that I could do in a kind of safe space, because I was considering the characters in the game, even though it's really my opinion because I'm writing it. So yeah, it definitely helped, and just in general, I think I feel happier having done it.
Oh, that's certainly good. Like, I mean, it would certainly be awkward to have regrets over that.
Yes, yeah.
Like, that being said, have you heard from people who have played the game? Like, did they quote unquote get it?
I don't really know. No one said anything about the themes yet. I've had curators and reviewers say that the story is dark and involved, but nothing specific. So I'm hoping that somebody is going to say, I understood it and I know, what you mean and stuff like that, and just say that I don't know, maybe it helped them or something like that.
It's possible. I mean, then again, it's not surprising that a reviewer wouldn't exactly touch upon that, except in like generalities. I mean, as somebody who reviews games quite often, like going into like the deeper thematic elements converge on it's spoiler talk.
Yeah.
It's like
That makes
so
sense.
it's like, and that's usually the kind of thing that either they talk about it under the guise of spoilers, or that's the kind of element that's left to be discovered on its own.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
In terms of role-playing mechanics, what can you level up?
It's kind of varied. It's a procedural game, so
Right.
there's no guarantees for what you're going to get. But you can do things like there's various gun types, and then I've got little inscriptions, which are like augmentations to boost their abilities. And you've got your attributes as a character, which you can level up by completing these trials, these rites, as I call them in the game. But the idea is that the RPG mechanics are there to ride the progression and the difficulty curve that's created by the story, if that makes sense.
It does. And are the upgrades permanent, or is there permadeath?
There's permadeath to an extent. I did put saves in after just battling with that in my head for ages. So there are some things that are permanent, like the rights are permanent, and if you put an inscription on a weapon, if you want to put a new inscription on it, overwrites the original one. So that's semi-permanent in a way. But the progression mechanics are RPG light, I would say, rather than in depth. It's not quite Oblivion level.
Right, and that's the difference between a rogue light and a rogue like.
Yeah.
And is this a game designed for long play sessions or short play sessions?
I would imagine it was probably short play sessions, just to be able to digest the story and stuff like that. That's how I wrote it, and that's how I kind of divided it up. It's in a set of acts, but I suppose you could play it all in one go. It might be a bit heavy work, like mentally.
I'd imagine so. This looks like the kind of game I would play for, say, a half an hour most.
Yeah.
And, then go take a break.
I try to imagine it like a book, picking it up and then putting it down and coming back and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, as I said, it's got a lot of heavy themes. Anyway, now, did you do all of the aspects of the game, including the music?
I didn't do the music. I was going to say that's the only thing I didn't do. I have a friend who's very good at music, and he offered to do it for me.
Yeah, it's like we have found in the past that if there's an element from a one-man development studio that isn't done by the developer themselves, it's usually the music.
Yeah, it's funny that.
It's not that funny, since developing music is almost like you need an entirely different sort of skill set than designing the other parts of the game.
Yeah. True.
Um,
And loads of equipment as well.
yeah. Right. And how is the music handled by your friend? Like, did you know? Like, at what stage was the music completed? Like, how many tracks? Did he have visual references to the game, that sort of thing?
Well, I gave him, builds of the game as it was in development, so he had an idea of what it was like, and I talked to him about the story as much as he wanted to listen, I guess. And then the tracks were just done. His preferred way of working is to kind of get like a mood board style thing. So describe what kind of emotions are trying to be evoked and what the atmosphere is. Originally, it was a whole bunch of tracks, but we in the end ended up having a 1 hour long atmospheric track that could be dipped in and out of, and then a bunch of tracks for combat and some special moments.
And how many tracks are there in total?
There are 5, I think, including the 1 hour track.
And in terms of learning everything, how is learning to develop in Unity?
Unity's not too bad, actually. I mean, I've used it for almost 7 years now, so starting this project, I was pretty comfortable with it. There was a lot in terms of software development and planning, which I would definitely go back and change, but I think that's true of anything. So I think I've learned the most in that respect. Trying to stop it from turning into a massive spider web, basically.
Certainly understandable. Now, did you develop this game for Windows only, or is it available for Mac and Linux platform?
At the moment, it's Windows only, but mostly out of caution. I mean, on Unity, you can build for any platform, and there's no platform-specific stuff on it. I just don't have access to the machines at the moment. I do have a Mac now, which I'll be able to test it on and hopefully release it on that soon.
And could you see this game working outside of the computer environment?
It's built for gamepad use as well. So in theory, it could end up on consoles. There's just the cost barrier. So you have to pay a license fee to publish on the consoles.
Right. What about mobile?
Unfortunately not. There are some things in it that are just too computationally expensive to be on most mobiles. I mean, maybe some of the more recent ones that are really powerful, but the lighting is quite expensive, so it might just be desktop and console bound for now.
And so, having gone through this entire process and so on and so forth, do you foresee yourself making more games?
Yeah, definitely. I've got, everybody's got ideas coming out of the wazoo, but I've decided that any future project, if I'm going to do it by myself, is going to be far more scaled back, and I'm going to put much more time into planning because I know what to expect now. So nothing of this scale unless I do it with someone else for sure.
I guess there were some lessons to be learned here.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, it's really easy to misjudge scale of a project when you're starting out because you just have no
idea. It's like that's why you go through the process.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I mean, it may be an obvious thing to state, but that seems to be the core focus of the game here, or at least one of them, outside of the thematic element. Anyway, do you guys have any more questions about Beyond the Veil here?
I do not.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
All right. I think I've asked everything I wanted to ask. So, the game is Beyond the Veil. It's currently on Steam. I suppose. Actually, I do have one last question. Are you looking into getting this game on, like, say, GOG?
I don't know. They're heavily curated, so I don't know if it'll make it on. But I would like to get it on some other stores.
Right. It's like, yeah, everyone's about curation until you get filtered out.
Yeah.
Now, I'm like, it's kind of why I'm not in favor of curation. At least not the curation that is done at GOG or EGS or any of those stores. Because there are really good games that get edited out because whatever reason they want.
Yeah, it's really tough. It's really difficult to know, what's right.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but
it's the state of things.
Yeah, indeed. Anyway, the game is Beyond the Veil. It's currently available for the Windows platform for $14.99. I suppose actually I do have another question. Any DLC plans? Any plans to have the soundtrack released independently?
I could do that. Yeah, that would be easy. I wouldn't charge for it. I'd just make it available for free. I'm hoping to do an update in the future, but nothing DLC wise.
Okay. Duly noted. All right. So be sure to pick it up today. All right. So that'll be about it for this portion of the episode. Be sure to tune in tonight at the regular time for the rest of things. Until then, I'll see you then.